This is a 2002 Lexus RX300, and it is setting a P0330 code for the NOx sensor on the front bank of the engine. It's the left bank, bank 2. Has the 3-liter VVTi engine in it. And unfortunately the NOx sensors are buried. A little testing is going to be required. And pretty much no matter what you do to the motor, this cover's got to come off. And it has 3 5mm hex head bolts in the front to be removed, or tubes. And then this emblem, you can just rip it out of there, I guess, or you can unthread it and get the back loose. And we can see what's going on in there now. These will fall out of this if you turn it upside down, so don't lose them. The NOx sensors are underneath the intake, and they measure frequency coming off of pre-detonation and the combustion chambers, and send that information to the engine computer, and it retards the timing based on the level. And it also, the general engine running gives off a certain frequency that the computer measures to make sure that those sensors are functioning properly. And when that frequency is out of range or too low, then either the sensors failed or the wiring harness. Now these sensors are on this side, and they got a harness that comes out on the back corner of the engine underneath of this throttle body. And I'm going to go ahead and take the air cleaner out of it, and just for a test, so I'm not doing any extra footwork, I'm going to switch the NOx sensor plug in and drive it and see if the code changes from a P0330 to 325. See if it moves to the next bank, then I'll definitely know either the harness or the NOx sensor is bad. Something that's happening when that sets a code for the NOx sensor. The computer is defaulting the transmission to drive, or nothing above drive, and that's about 3,200 RPM at 50 miles an hour. So to clear the code off, it's alright until the code resets, the check engine light comes on, traction control comes on, and the vehicle will stay in fourth and lock up torque converter until you slow down to drive or second gear, and then it'll only go to drive and not lock up the converter on top of it. So it's got to be dealt with. On this particular one, I'm going to snap the air cleaner, 2 snaps in the front and a hinge in the back, unplug the mass airflow sensor, and take that hose clamp off and slip that vent tube off, and then unplug the vent solenoid. And I'll go down here to take the air cleaner tube loose from the air cleaner top. And it's got this contraption to unhook. Which I think I took it off the bottom down here. And you can either unhook it or set it off if you're going to run this test. Pull the air filter out of it. And then there's 3 10mm bolts. Needs taken loose. And pull the air box up out of it. It's got a little wire thing catching the accelerator cable down there. That's nice. And there's their knock sensor harness. I just took an old oxygen sensor plug-in, which it's fit that connector. It's good. And then I jumpered it to the other connector and reversed them. And when I drove it, the code did move to the other bank, so it definitely needs knock sensors in it. I just made a couple terminals out of open eyelets and fished them in, just reversed them. So now the daunting task of taking this thing apart. First thing I want to do is drain the antifreeze out of it. And there actually is a drain right in the center of the radiator. I'll slip a tube on that and catch that antifreeze. Although it probably could stand to be replaced. This thing has 243,000 on it. That's pretty expensive. Go ahead and take your radiator cap off so that it can get air to drain the antifreeze out of the drain. I've got a bucket under to catch it. I'm going to take a minute, take an air hose and blow all the sand from around the lower intake, just to get all the loose debris out of there. I'm going to go ahead and take this air cleaner tube loose from the throttle body by taking these two 10mm hose clamps loose. And feel free to mark any hoses you want. And I'll take this vent tube clamp, slide it back off the valve cover nipple here, and then work that hose off. And just be careful with these tubes not to stress them out. Pull them right at their clamp areas. And I'll just lay it down there and unhook anything. And it'll just give me a better view of what's going on down in there. I went ahead and slid this evap tube hose clamp back. I'll probably pull it off there and push it back out of the way. I took a 12mm wrench and the cruise control cable, just loosen one nut, give it a little turn, leave the other one put, just slide that off of there, fish it around, and just pick that cable out the side of the slot made for it, just to get it out of the way. And there's a brace for the intake plenum back there. See it right. And it's that black upright, and then there's that bolt holding the power steering line to it, and up the end of that upright, your bolt, and it's missing, so somebody's already probably been in here and they left that bolt out of the support for this plenum. Trivial. See, it's missing. It's a hole. There was supposed to be a bolt in that, and it's missing out of it, so I don't have to worry about taking that support bolt out, I guess. And come around the other side, and there's a ground set up on that intake. Feel free to remove that 12mm nut and get those ground eyelets off of that, and take the clamp loose for the brake booster vacuum hose. Slide it back. I'm going to come around and take these 3 bolts out of this throttle body mounting plate, and it'll require a gasket, a throttle body mounting gasket under fuel injection. And it's got 3 12mm holding it on. And I'll just let it lay off. Just go in through the end of it to get the other 2, the ones out and open. I'll get them loosened up, and then I'll take these water bypass hoses off the intake. I took the 2 water bypass hose, or throttle body preheater hoses, I guess. Took the clamps loose. Use the hoses back, for sure not to break the nipples. Probably a few drops of antifreeze come out of it. And get them back. And take the last nut off the throttle body mount. And there's the gasket. It's a metal one originally. I think GoPro makes a I'll put it over here and keep oil and antifreeze off from around the windshield area so it don't blow up on the windshield. Wipers. And there's the upright for this. I reckon it had a 14mm bolt in it originally, headed bolt. I used a medium depth 1/4 inch drive 14mm to get that brace loose from the back. There's a line running up the firewall. It interferes with the short wheel getting in there. And short of taking the engine mount loose and rolling the motor forward or tearing this whole top off, that's about the only way to get it out of there. I suppose you could use a hinge ratchet, but it's something else. As I say, be sure and wear gloves around that fiberglass. I took and dug a little bit of it out to give me some better clearance back there, and switched over to a short 1/4 inch drive socket, and it's still coming out of there. I'm going to go ahead and start taking these nuts loose on this, see if I can get some movement in this plenum to make that one come out back there a little easier. And I got some 10mm on this emission solenoid rack here. And take it loose and then break these 14mm nuts loose on the intake plenum. I went ahead and unplugged this solenoid set from the wire harness and took this vacuum line off of this diaphragm for the split plenum, and I'll just lay it over here. This line kind of come off with it, but it really is the only place it's going to fit on there. Alright, it's got some hex heads here, and the outer perimeter is 14mm nuts. They are 8mm. Loosening those front bolts up did help that out some, but it put up a fight all the way to the end. Or not. The PCV vent needs to be the clamp loosened up and the hose pulled off of it yet. And I finished taking those hex heads up out of there. And the hex heads are out. Now there's a 10mm holding this power steering line to the plenum. Sideways right there. I'll take it, break it loose, get it off of there, and slide that plenum out. That was a jewel. So there's the bracket for it's right there. That was super nice. Now the plenum should be free and clear to navigate. Provided to get one more ground pulled off of it. Once the intake plenum's out of there, stuff some paper towels down in the intake ports so nothing falls down in there and causes severe engine damage. Now that bracket, that is why it's such a problem to get that bolt out of there. Is that line keeps you from getting the ratchet in line with the shaved top on that bolt. It's not very deep. And that and the bore's shaped like a C-channel. Be an excellent time to carve the side out of that bore to make it easier next time, or put a spacer underneath that bolt head. But when you're going in behind this thing, go in and drop this in from the top and get on it. But it hits that pipe back here. Before it sits square on it. And I carved a little bit of that fiberglass out, giving me more clearance too. And that line actually turns out to be one of the brake fluid line feed pipes for the reservoir. So I say a person come over here and dislodge that line and pull it sideways a little bit. Probably get a regular 1/4" drive shallow wheel ratchet under that bolt and get it off of there a lot easier. Everything's going along well. Come over here and mark these if you want, and take these 2 heater hoses off of these lines for the thermostat housing area in the intake. And take a clamp, slide it back, get it out of the way, and then get on that clamp, slide it back, and get that hose. Then I can kind of manipulate the throttle body around a little farther back, away from this mess. That's looking pretty good, I guess. Alright, that's looking pretty good. Just make sure the accelerator cable, if you left it on there, doesn't get bound up and cracked. And actuates this flap in the center. I got some gap opened up around it. I'm going to take these, well, they're supposed to be 2 10mm bolts, but I'm going to take that one out of this injector harness shroud and unplug all the injectors, and I suppose I can leave them fastened on back there. I'll unhook the injectors with any luck. Better than a lot of them, I guess. Excellent time to remove any debris that's accumulated on the intake or broken plastic pieces. This one was busted out. I took an air hose and didn't disturb the paper towels and blew out the trench around the intake on each side with some sand. And I'm going to go ahead and start taking the 12mm nuts and bolts out of the intake. Now if you get bored, you might lift the throttle body back up and go over here and get this lock off the fuel line. Stick a screwdriver down in each side of this closed pin and open it up and lift it up out of there, and then this falls off. And then just use squeeze these ears in and pull the line off. I set some shop towels underneath of it to catch the fuel that's going to run out of it. Got a little gray squeezies on the side there. Got all 11 fasteners off. Be sure you pull the washers up with the nuts. It's probably going to be a little sticky because there's a couple of studs, so it's going to ride them up out of there. I dislodged it from the water outlet side. It came from this rigid area. Come over here and help the fuel line get up through the mess over here without breaking it, hopefully. Just remember that it goes back down between two of the throttle body hoses. That's extra special. Alright. Got a hole in it now. I need to transfer the paper towels into these ports while I'm cleaning. Probably shop back all that loose sand up. There's the left bank knock sensor, and there's the right bank one. And there's a hose that's interfering with their removal. I suppose you can get them around it. Maybe not the bottom one. But this water outlet needs to come off anyway to replace that gasket underneath. It sits on top of it. Just take that clamp loose and pull the hose up some. Be sure you check all your ports for any foreign particles in them. I don't know if there's something in there or not. Antifreeze. I'm going to unplug that water temperature sensor and take the 4 12mm nuts and bolts up out of that water outlet, and take that hose clamp, slide it back and get the hose broke loose from it. And a couple of ground hold downs here will be taken loose. Probably loosen that stabilizer bracket. A couple of 14mm in it. The actual bolts in that water outlet, the hold down, the front one is shorter than the back one. Just keep it in mind when it's going back in there. I took one bolt out of the engine stabilizer bracket, pushed it off to the side, and then tightened the front one down the holder there, and then pried up and dislodged this water outlet from the studs. Now I just need to get it off the hose without destroying anything. And the freeze is just waiting to come out. But I don't know, we're in business now. Well, them are some jewels down in there, alright. And I'm going to go ahead and unplug them. I bought sensors with generic harness online. It's a lot cheaper than buying it downtown. All this plastic is brittle, and zip tie it back into place. And make sure your ports are blocked with paper towels so none of those shards of plastic and trash end up down the ports, or life as you know it may change drastically if you don't catch it. Here's one of the new sensors and a new harness. Be sure you use OEM quality sensors. You do not want to come back in here. Now the problem with this one was the left front. I'm sure the right rear is ready. Let's do them both. The harness comes out under the intake and under this variable cam timing solenoid, and the plug-in's right on the corner of the engine back here. So just be sure to route it the same way. One sensor connector is shorter in length, so you don't get confused about which one goes where, and one won't reach the other without bunching up another one, but it'll just lay right down in there. Mouse over the video and hit the circle I to continue to the next part of the video.